Have you ever wondered why humans dream? Imagine yourself in the year 1450, lying on a straw-stuffed mattress inside a small, timber-framed cottage in the English countryside. The air is cold, thick with the scent of wood smoke from the dying embers of the hearth-damp earth, and wet thatch. It is roughly 2 o'clock in the morning. Outside, the night is pitch black, far darker than any night you have ever experienced in our modern, light-polluted world. Suddenly, your eyes open. You are completely awake, but you do not feel panicked. Your heart is not racing, and you do not reach for a phone or look at a clock with frustration. Instead, you feel a profound sense of tranquility. You look over at your family members, and they too are beginning to stir. Some are murmuring softly, others are sitting up to stoke the fire, while some simply lie in the darkness, staring at the ceiling in quiet contemplation. This is not a sleep disorder. This is not what we today call middle-of-the-night insomnia. This is the watch, a natural, peaceful, and highly creative waking interval that existed between what our ancestors called the first sleep and the second sleep. For the vast majority of human history, across almost every culture on Earth, humans did not sleep in one continuous, uninterrupted 8-hour block. They slept in 2 distinct phases, and this midnight gap was considered the most sacred, biochemically unique hour of the day. During this quiet midnight window, the human brain is flooded with prolactin, a hormone associated with feelings of peace, connection, and vivid mental imagery. It is a state of waking dreaminess, where the boundary between the conscious mind and the subconscious world is paper-thin. In this hour, our ancestors did not worry about productivity. They used this time to pray, write, converse with their loved ones, make love, and most importantly, they used it to reflect on and share the dreams they had just emerged from. They understood that dreaming was not just an accidental byproduct of being asleep. It was a vital piece of human existence, a nightly theater that held the keys to their survival, their health, and their connection to the cosmos. But today, this ancient ritual is entirely gone. We have severed our connection to this midnight state, and in doing so, we have fundamentally altered how we dream, how we sleep, and how we understand our own minds. Why did our biology design us to experience this strain, hallucinatory theater of the mind every single night in the first place? And what happens to a species when it decides to mute its own dreams? To understand why we dream, we must first understand how we lost the environment in which our dreams used to thrive. The transition from biphasic sleep, sleeping in 2 shifts, to our modern monophasic sleep, sleeping in 1 compressed block was not a slow, natural evolutionary shift. It was a violent, rapid cultural revolution driven by the gears of industrialization. Before the late 18th century, the night belonged to the dark and to the dreamers. Historian Roger Eckert, who spent decades unearthing hundreds of historical documents, diaries, court records, and medical books, discovered that references to first sleep and second sleep were once as common as breathing. People would sleep for about 4 hours after dusk, wake up for an hour or 2 of quiet midnight wakefulness, and then drift back into another 4-hour slumber. It was a rhythm deeply aligned with the natural movement of the earth and the rising and setting of the sun. But with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, the concept of time was radically redesigned. Factories needed workers to operate machinery on rigid, continuous schedules. Time became money, and sleep, which was once a fluid, natural rhythm, was suddenly viewed as a waste of productive hours. The invention of artificial gas lighting, followed by Thomas Edison's incandescent light bulb in the late 19th century, effectively conquered the night. For the first time in human history, we could turn darkness into day at the flick of a switch. This technological triumph came at a devastating psychological cost. Streetlights and home lighting extended our waking hours deep into the night, pushing our bedtime later and later. But because the factory whistle and the office clock still demanded we show up early in the morning, our sleep window was squeezed. We could no longer afford the luxury of waking up at 2:00 a.m. for a 2-hour midnight watch. We had to compress our sleep into a single, uninterrupted 8-hour block, By forcing our biology into this artificial mold, we did not just lose sleep, we lost our direct pathway to our dreams. In the old biphasic system, waking up naturally after the first sleep allowed people to easily recall the vivid dreams of their rapid eye movement, or REM cycles. Today, we do the exact opposite. We sleep through our dream cycles, only to be violently ripped out of them by the blaring shriek of a smartphone alarm. We rush out of bed, immediately flooding our brains with cortisol and sensory distractions, instantly erasing the delicate neural traces of our nighttime visions. We have turned dreaming from a vital, daily conversation with our inner selves into a forgotten, nighttime anomaly that we dismiss as meaningless brain noise. But our ancestors knew better. They recognized that dreams were far too complex, far too emotionally charged, and far too vivid to be mere accidents of the night. If we travel back to the very cradle of human civilization, we find that the earliest societies did not view dreams as internal psychological projections, but as external, physical realities. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 3100 BCE, the Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians lived in a world where the boundary between the human realm and the divine was incredibly porous. Udea claimed that the god Ningirsu appeared to him in a dream, standing giant-like with wings of a storm bird, commanding him to rebuild the great Eninu temple. Udea did not hesitate. He treated the dream as a literal, divine blueprint, mobilizing his entire kingdom to construct the temple exactly as the vision had dictated. This belief that dreams were divine communications was taken to its absolute extreme in ancient Egypt and classical Greece through the practice of dream incubation. Imagine being an ancient Greek citizen suffering from a chronic, painful illness that the local physicians could not cure. Desperate, you would make a pilgrimage to one of the great temples of Asclepius, the god of medicine and healing, such as the one at Epidaurus. Upon arriving, you would not simply lie down and sleep. You had to undergo a rigorous process of purification. You would fast for days, bathe in sacred springs, offer sacrifices to the gods, and listen to the priests recite stories of miraculous cures. Only then, wrapped in a sacred animal skin, would you be allowed to enter the abaton, the dark, silent inner chamber of the temple. However, as human civilization progressed, our understanding of dreams began to shift from the supernatural to the physiological. The first major crack in the divine theory of dreams appeared in ancient Greece with the rise of rational medicine. Hippocrates, often called the father of modern medicine, and later the influential physician Galen, began to look at dreams not as messages from the gods, but as early warning signals from the human body itself. Hippocrates argued that when we are awake, our conscious mind is bombarded by external sensory inputs, which drowns out the quiet, internal signals of our organs. But when we sleep, the soul retreats inward, free from external distractions. In this quiet state, the brain can perceive the subtle, internal changes occurring within the body. If a patient dreamt of a raging fire, Hippocrates believed it was not an omen of war, but a sign of an excess of yellow bile and internal inflammation. If they dreamt of a dark, overflowing river, it indicated a buildup of phlegm or a circulatory blockage. This was a revolutionary leap in human thought. Dreams were no longer seen as a bridge to the heavens, but as a mirror reflecting the hidden, biological state of our physical bodies. While the ancient Greeks began to realize that dreams were connected to our biology, they lacked the scientific tools to understand why our biology would develop such a bizarre, energy-consuming mechanism in the first place. Why would natural selection preserve a trait that forces us to lie unconscious, vulnerable to predators, for a third of our lives, all while our brains consume almost as much glucose and oxygen as they do when we are awake, painting vivid, often terrifying illusions behind our closed eyelids? The answer to this evolutionary riddle lies in one of the most common, universal experiences of the human night, the nightmare. Think about your own dreams. How often do you dream of a peaceful, mundane day at the office, where everything goes exactly according to plan? Almost never. Instead, your dreams are likely filled with scenarios of being chased by an unseen pursuer, falling from a great height, losing your teeth, arriving completely unprepared for a crucial exam. Why is the emotional tone of our dreams